Hey y'all, welcome to Fitting and Homemaking. My name is Sarah, and today we are going to be talking about how I did in 2025 for my low spend year. Okay, all kidding aside. First, I'm going to give you a little background on why I did my low spend year for 2025, because in this video we are going to assess how I did with my goals. We'll talk about my goals first, assess how I did with my goals, and then talk about some next steps. Okay, so I did a low spend year in 2025 because one of the financial goals I wanted to hit in 2025 was paying off my car. I bought a car in 2022. It was a 2020 Honda CR-V. The loan was a 6-year loan, which I think is insane that they allow people to have 6-year loans for cars. But those were the payments I was most comfortable with. I knew I was going to be able to make them. And I also knew that I would be trying my hardest to pay it off early, preferably within 3 years. The 3 years would have been October of 2025. I knew that wasn't going to happen just because of other fiscal responsibilities that I have. But that was the goal. And it was not kind of a stretch goal. It was a stretch goal. What ended up happening was in April, I ended up paying off the car, which might seem weird since I just said paying it off by the end of last year was a stretch goal. But what happened was I have a high yield savings account that I keep a 6-month emergency fund in. I have dependents. I have been in a position before when I was by myself that I was barely able to make my bills each month, and I was like assessing the economic properties of one bag of rice compared to another, right? I've been there where I've had to make a decision based on every single dollar I have. That's actually how I got into budgeting for myself in the first place. That was way back in my 20s. Now in my early 40s, mid 40s, almost early 40s still, I guess, I have dependents, right? So I have made sure that after having gone through seasons of want and need, that having savings to fall back on was really important to me. So I took the money from my emergency fund and paid off the car in April because interest rates were changing at a 3.99% interest rate on the car, which was just, I thought was exorbitant because of what my credit score is, and the previous car that I bought, I had a 0% interest rate on. So it just like blew my mind that someone could charge almost 4% for interest, right, on a car. And then I watch more financial videos and other people have like 15% interest on their car loans, which is just highway robbery, right? And then I got distracted because now I'm thinking about those videos. Oh, April, yes. So in April, interest rates in my high yield savings account dipped below a point where it made sense to keep that money in there versus the interest rate on the car loan, right? It didn't make sense. I was going to be losing money in interest on the car loan rather than keeping it in my savings account to build the money I was earning off that interest, right? So I took the lump sum in April, paid off the car. So then my financial goal for the year was to build my emergency fund back up to a 6-month emergency fund since I had taken a chunk of money out. Now that chunk of money, well, I had to think about it for a while because it felt scary. It did not deplete my account enough to where if there was an emergency, I couldn't handle it, right? I still had a decent amount left in that account. All right, so that explanation being said, what we're gonna focus on in this video is assessing if I was able to build my savings account back up to a 6-month emergency fund. We'll take a look at how you determine what you need to have in an account for a 6-month emergency fund, right? How you can determine what that number is. And I also want to pause to take a little celebration about the work that I did last year. Now, I didn't get as much money set aside as I would have liked. But if I look at all of the extra payments I put towards my car before I paid it off, and then all of my transfers to my savings account, last year I set aside $4,616.22. So that averages out to be about $385 a month. Now, I did not set that amount aside each month. Some months I set way more than that aside. I think the lowest amount I set aside towards saving was like, or extra payment towards the car was like $20 or something like that, because expenses fluctuate, right? And that's part of what makes it difficult, well, not difficult, it makes it slightly more complicated to determine how much you need to have in an emergency fund to cover 6 months, right? Okay, y'all, so let's take a look at what you need to do to determine how much money you need to have set aside for a 6-month emergency fund. Or this method works the same way for a 3-month emergency, a 12-month emergency fund. I've chosen 6 months just because a decent number of financial advisors, financial gurus, whatever you want to call them, have decided on this arbitrary number, and it seems to make sense to me. It's like an amount I feel comfortable with having in a high yield savings, right? So something that is super helpful is if you have already been budgeting or keeping a budget or keeping track of your bills, that's going to help a lot. If you haven't done that, that's fine. Most banks, most credit cards, they're going to have those records for you. It's just going to take you a little bit more time to go back in the past and to do these steps, right? So since I was doing my low spend year, I was obviously tracking pretty closely and reporting to you guys what these numbers were. So what I decided to do to see if I met my goal of building back up to a 6-month emergency fund is I looked at my expenses for the months of May through December from last year. I didn't take those first 4 months because I still had a car payment in those first 4 months. And now I don't need to account for that, right? My car's paid off. I don't need to have that extra money in the pot. So how I have my spreadsheet set up is I have my income and I have my expenses, but my expenses are broken up into needs and broken up into wants, right? So in the needs category, I have my household expenses. So the part of the household expenses that I need to contribute. Now, some of those household expenses may be wants, but I have it entirely in my needs category because my husband relies on me to pay my share of that, just like I rely on him to pay his share of that. And those are expenses that we decide on together, and moving those numbers significantly one way or another, either up or down, is a joint decision. So for me, those are necessary expenses because I am being relied on by another person to provide that money, right? So all household expenses are in my needs category. Another line in my needs category is gas for my car. I don't live in an area with super amazing public transport. That's usually only in like the fairly large cities of America. I live in a suburb that's outside of a medium-sized city, and they're buses. There's no light rail, they're buses, but it is not close enough to where I could make our schedule work by taking public transportation. So gas for my car is a definite need. And then I have miscellaneous needs in the category, things that come up. So doctor's copays, prescription drug copays, if I have to go to the doctor, car repairs or car services, toiletries. Like I said, I'm in my 40s. I want to use the products that I want to use, but I also don't expect my husband to pay for, half of my face cream or whatever when I'm choosing to use that product specifically, right? I'm not getting like $100 face cream, but I'm also not getting the $5 face cream, right? So toiletries, replenishing toiletries like that are my personal toiletries. Those kind of things they fall in that miscellaneous category. They vary month to month. So that is what makes my needs categories within my total expenses. The other categories that fit in my wants categories are donations and gifts. So birthday gifts for people, and I put this as a want because you can pretty easily do free or very low cost gifts. Like you can bake something for someone, you can make a homemade card, you can make a craft at very low cost, right? So these are wants. There are also some donations that I traditionally make. that's in one category. And then the other is just leisure spending, you know, like taking my kids out for ice cream, buying that decor that I want, you know, that piece of decor for the house that I want, going out for lunch with friends, you know, buying those cookies that look delicious at the grocery store, right? Those sorts of things. So that falls within my wants categories. So what I decided to do to figure out what my 6-month emergency fund needed to look like now, post not having a car payment, was I looked at the total cost of my needs within my expense category from May to December 2025. So that gave me 8 months of data, right? And then I averaged that. So my average monthly needs during that time ended up being $3,005.99. So then it's, you know, it's simple math. You just added up all the months divided by 8. And to get a 6-month figure for what your 6-month needs would be, you just times it by 6, right? It's pretty simple math. So that turns out to be $18,035.95. So that is kind of the base level of what I would want my 6-month emergency fund to be. Now, I also wanted to look at my total expenses, because how likely is it that I'm going to be able to totally cut out any like leisure spending, essentially. I'm not going to want to skip giving birthday gifts for friends. I'm not going to want to skip an occasional lunch with friends, right? So I did the same thing that I did looking at my needs, but with my total expenses, so my needs and my wants categories. And if I looked at my total expenses from May to December, that monthly average came out to $3,388.65. So times that by 6 and we get the figure of $20,331.92. So now I have a range that I can deal with of what the low end of a 6-month emergency fund would be and what the high end of a 6-month emergency fund would be. So this is in a high yield savings account. So I'm not losing money per se, but I'm only gaining a certain amount of interest on it. And the interest rates have not been as good lately as they have been in the recent past, which is fine. But I don't want to be keeping, how would I say that? I wouldn't want to be keeping more than 6 months aside, because that money could be better served elsewhere, right? I could be investing that money and making more money, making my money do more for me in other areas, right? I have other financial goals that I want to focus on after I get the 6-month emergency fund sorted out, after I had my car paid off, right? So for me personally, my 6-month emergency fund is going to range between $18,035.95 and $20,331.92. How did I do last year? Did I make it there? Right? Did the $4,616.22, did it get me there? The answer is no, it did not. It got me close though, okay? So my current savings at the end of 2025 with my interest payments included in there is $17,150.35. So I am shy of the base value that I want for my 6-month emergency fund. All right, so how much of a shortfall do I have here? For the needs-based emergency fund, I am $885.60 shy of that. For the expenses, total expenses-based emergency fund, I am $3,181.57 shy of that. All right, so I missed my goal. Let's talk about my plan moving forward. I do not want to do the same thing that I did last year. I found it really hard to motivate myself towards the end of the year. And I think it will take a really long time for me to mosey my way to the goals if I continue on in the same fashion that I was doing before. There is nothing wrong with it. I'm just tired of doing it. I know I'm not motivated anymore. And I really want to get this knocked out, right? Like I said, I have other things I want to be doing with my money rather than setting it aside for these things. So here is the plan. So for each month, I have an estimated budget, what I think I'm going to spend in each category. And generally, I'm pretty close on that. You know, December, I did a bad job. If you go and watch that video, I did not do a good job at estimating in December. But most months, I do a decent job at estimating, okay? So for most months, my household expenses kind of go between about $2,600 and about $2,800, depending on if it is a more expensive month for daycare or a less expensive month for daycare. That's where the main variation happens. There's a little variation for like kids' birthday parties and things like that, but it's not as significant as having to pay for an extra week of daycare during a specific month. So that's what my household expenses vary in between, purely focused on, is there an extra week of daycare included in this month or not? Then for gas, usually I stick around $60 for gas. That's about 2 tanks of gas for me. Some months I only get 1 tank of gas, and the next month I have 3 tanks of gas because just of how billing falls. But generally about $60 worth of gas is what I can rely on. Miscellaneous needs, usually that's like in the $75 to $100 range of what I set aside. Some months some months it's like $20, but $75 to $100 is a good estimate for that. And then in the wants category, the gifts vary just based on birthdays, any holidays we have coming up, that sort of thing. And then I have my fun spending, right? And my fun spending is something that I'd like to say I'm in total control of it, because I am, even though it doesn't always feel like that. So what I'm doing for the plan is I have looked at those anticipated expenses, adjusted slightly for birthdays and these sorts in daycare. And then I have a savings goal for each month, a specific number that I want to hit for each month to motivate myself more than just let's set as much aside as possible. So for January, that number is the $885.60 that I am falling short of for the base needs-based 6-month emergency fund. I will have to be on point, like within $10 of my estimated cost to be able to do that. And that is with the $2,600 of household expenses, $60 in gas, $75 in miscellaneous needs, which it's January already. I broke something in my house and I had to replace it, and that was almost $60. So that one might be a little bit tight. And then my husband's birthday is also in January, so I've bought a gift for him, but I need to take my kids shopping so they can buy him a little something. So I have $100 set aside for that in case the kids' tastes get slightly pricier than I would like. But I also have zero, nada, nilch fun spending for myself. And that is what you're going to see going forward until I get this fund back where I want it to be, because I'm trying to do it as quickly as humanly possible. So the goal for January is to transfer $885.60 to my high yield savings account. And then boom, I hit my goal that I fell short for last year of having the bottom end of a 6-month emergency fund, right? For February, household expenses are going to be closer to $2,800 because I'm paying forward for March, and March has 5 Mondays in it for daycare. $60 in gas, $75 in miscellaneous needs, and then $50 for gifts because Valentine's Day is there for my husband and for my kids. And then again, zero fun spending. So the savings goal for February is going to be $700. And I have a wiggle room of about $40 with that one based on my estimated budget. Flip my page over for my numbers. All right, in March, again, $2,600 household expenses, $60 gas, $75 miscellaneous needs, and I have $50 for gifts here in case for some reason I'm buying an early birthday gift for my daughter or something like that. I didn't feel comfortable putting that completely to zero. My fun spending, again, $0. The savings goal for March, $900, okay? And I can hit that if I stay within $40 of my estimated budget, my very simple budget here. April estimated $2,700 of household expenses. That one's a little bit higher because we do throw a birthday party for my daughter each year. Sometimes it's like renting a shelter in a park. She's been having murmurings of, doing a more like a party at a kids museum, like an all-included sort of thing. So we need to talk to her about that. But that's why those household expenses I'm anticipating them to be a little bit higher. $60 for gas, $75 for miscellaneous, $50 for gifts. And so the gifts for my daughter will mostly be out of our joint household account. But if I see something special, or maybe I'll take her out for a little special time together, right? A mommy-daughter date or something. And then the last month, I do have $50 of fun spending for myself as a little reward, because this should be the last month that I need to set aside money to make the top end of my 6-month emergency fund. So if I save $700 that month, and I should be able to do that if I'm within $150 of my estimated budget, I should get to the top end of my 6-month total expenses saving goal. So I'm looking at the end of April. That's 4 months past what I wanted my original goal to be of paying off the car. But like I said, that was a stretch goal to begin with. Paying myself back the savings was a stretch goal to begin with by the end of the year. So I'm pleased that I have mapped out that I can get this done in 4 months. It's going to be a little bit brutal of 4 months of no fun spending because I already know things I want to buy. But I think having these monthly savings numbers in place ahead of time as a goal to strive for, I can remind myself of that when I'm thinking of these little incidental purchases that I want to make that are wants and not needs, right? I mean, if something comes up that's a need, obviously I'm going to pay for it. But yeah, I think having these written down, having them in my budget spreadsheet, telling y'all to keep me accountable, I think I will be able to do it. This is a lifestyle that I have lived before where I just didn't have the money to spend, so I absolutely had to do things for free, for fun, if I wanted to have fun, right? So that's the goal. I was telling you about how much wiggle room I had each month to make this happen based on my estimated expenses. That's a little bit of a fallacy. I will have a little bit more wiggle room than that because it is a high yield savings account, so I am earning interest and I get paid out that interest each month. So right now, each month I'm getting about $50 worth of interest on that account. So that's an extra about $200 to play with by the end of the 4 months. So that's the plan. I hope the information about how to determine what you need your 6-month emergency fund or 3-month or however many months maybe it's just a 1-month emergency fund, right? I hope that information was helpful to you. I will be doing a monthly review like I did this year, hopefully only for 4 months this time, because I want to be done with this. I have put a hiatus on automated transfers to my kids' 529s while I get this stuff sorted out, because my kids, there will be 5 and 3 this year, so I want to have the time to build those accounts up, but I also want to make sure that my financial house is in order before I do that. Ideally, it would be nice to spend more money, set some more money aside for retirement than I am right now. I'm fine with my retirement money. I'm definitely on track. But I also know that I will be 58 when my son graduates high school. And I remember my early and mid 20s and my parents being very kind and still helping me out a little bit financially in my early 20s until I was able to really get my feet under me and get settled, because that took way longer than I anticipated. I entered the workforce in 2007. Yay, recession, 2008, official. So yeah, I know what hardships people can hit in their early 20s, and I know that finances aren't always the easiest thing. I'm going to do my best to try to, educate my kids, and my husband will as well, because that's important to him. But I would like to get them set up with good college funds. Even if they don't go to college, they can still use it for a trade school. You can cash out some of it to a Roth account for them. There are many ways you can use it. So I want to get money going towards that again. And I also have a fun spending goal. I would like to put money to, my husband and I talked about doing a safari, an African safari for his 50th birthday. It's been on his bucket list. It's something I'd like to do. It's something I'd like our kids to be able to do. We realized that we need to push that to 55 because just when you first get together and you're talking about these, lofty goals, you don't understand how expensive daycare is before you have kids, right? You can hear the numbers, but you don't feel how expensive it is, right? So I have that kind of savings goal that I'd like to be able to move on to. But for the next 4 months, this is going to be my focus. Those other savings goals, having these numbers, telling you guys about them will hopefully motivate me to get this stuff knocked out, right? And then I'm not going to go crazy and not do any sort of low spend living, because we still have to, right? Things are still expensive. But it will be nice to kind of get past this goal and check it off my list. All right, if you guys have a financial goal that you're reaching toward, whether it's saving for an emergency, building up your emergency fund, whether it's paying off some debt, whatever it is, go down in the comments below if you're comfortable and share with us. I would love for us to be able to support each other as a community, give tips and tricks that have worked for each other. I would really love to build a community like that. My channel isn't mostly based on budgeting, but it is based on homemaking, and budgeting is an important part of that, right? Maybe you came here for my baking videos. I don't know. I love baking so much. Maybe you like just watching the cleaning videos. Maybe you like the budgeting stuff, right? So I'm trying to have a variety of things on this channel, but I want us all to support each other, right? So go down in the comments below if you have a financial goal. Even just sharing it with the world, I feel like helps make that goal more attainable, helps you become more accountable towards that goal, right? So go ahead and do that. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this content. If you'd like to follow me on my journey and see if I accomplish this nonsense, it's gonna get real, right? If I accomplish this stuff over the next 4 months, hit the notification bell, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified when these videos come out each month. And thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I will see you the next time. Bye.